Today the President, as we've seen, attended the graduation ceremony of the new batch of police cadets, and usually that day is fruitful, as we've seen in the report, bestowing the second-class Medal of Excellence on the top graduates, and we've seen that the graduates also include usually Arab as well as African students. Professor, Egypt as a hub today, and also at the same time, as we could see in different universities, and also even at the military academy and the police academy, we would see graduates from the Arab and the African world. So definitely lots of messages, as well as after 7 years of achievements, including the field of education and becoming an educational hub for students from the Arab world and Africa. How do you see that sign today?
That sign today was very pleasing to me, and I think for all Egyptians, because the police academy, together with all the military academies, their product, if I may use this word, our sons, our brothers, our sisters, our future generations that are going to protect and defend. As the President said, we cannot really thank them enough. We cannot really be grateful enough for what they do. Critical times needs a lot of attention, need high qualifications. Those who want to or think that they can touch the boundaries and the borders of Egypt, which goes in despair, thanks to these people. One of the touching things that I really like today, among so many things, of course, the President always is keen to address the families. Yes. Not just the graduates, because he realizes, and I am someone like many of the viewers whose father was in the military, and you know very well that as proud as you are, but you have moments that they are far away, and you don't know in which circumstances during wartime. And Egypt is while in peace now, but definitely these are not the time to be relaxed in protecting our country. One other good sign that I really liked, seeing the graduation of a good batch of women police officers.
Yes.
A new addition. It's not only the gender balance, it's the form of equality that we talk about, the human rights, the ability to add that element to our security. Yes. Is definitely a big plus. And as an Egyptian, and I think like all other Egyptians, we are all very proud and pleased with this.
Definitely it is, and as you've wisely said also, women empowerment in one of its best forms has been manifested earlier in the day, and we've seen also combat skills for our ladies in combat side by side by the gentlemen with the main noble cause defending Egypt. Talking about promoting education, and while talking about promoting education and developing education, we are also talking sustainability. So always thinking of Egypt's strategy vis-a-vis the Sustainable Development Goals and the Vision 2030, and how can we have an educational platform that would serve that goal?
I will start by saying the most important feature of what's happening now and in the, let's say, the new republic, and I like really addressing it that way, is that we're talking about education within a larger context. With the build, I don't want to use the word restructuring, but the build and requalification of the Egyptian men and women, young and afterwards, because we are talking about education now and talking about continuing education for the rest of our lives. So it comes in a larger context in which we highlight truly education as a big part, but of a larger umbrella. It's a main feature, and it's a main, if you put education, if you put culture, and I like that very, very much in your introduction, very correctly, culture, education, the ability to fit that with human rights, with giving the opportunity for the younger generation and their families and those who supported them all the way. It's definitely the right message, and definitely a main emphasis of the President himself, the cabinet, and definitely the Egypt's vision for 2030. And when I talk about that, I talk about Egypt sharing this vision with, let's say, not only neighbors in the Arab world, but also in African continent as a whole and other parts in the world. Because education as we know it today, as we experience today, is not limited within one geographic boundary. Not within the country, not within even the university or the school, but definitely in a global sense. So the ability to integrate these efforts and to share them and to reciprocate the experiences and the lessons learned is definitely a big plus and a main feature for what's happening in the future.
Yes, talking the future, and since we're talking about in anticipation of what's happening in the future, and the president had a far-sighted vision vis-a-vis the future when he decided to invest in the future, namely in the youth of Egypt. And this has been manifested in more than one occasion. And we'd see the World Youth Forum and the strategy for the youth, how to invest in them, how to build cadres, how to invest in their potential. Today we have the youth of Egypt also in decision-making posts as assistant governors and assistant ministers. So they have this sense of confidence. We've seen him giving also this sense of confidence today for the new cadets as he talked to them directly and told them that we wish that you are always going to be like, and I use his word, idols when dealing with the citizens and when dealing with their safety, because the safety of the citizens comes first. So how do you see this sense of instilling this sense of confidence in the youth, especially when we have cadets who are going to be responsible for our safety for the future?
A truly good question, because we're talking about instilling it not only in the cadets, but instilling it also in the Egyptian people as a whole. When you and I feel secured and safe, that's actually the first and the most important step towards development, towards sustainability, towards investment, whether from within Egypt and from foreign investment with all its forms. Instilling that is a message to the world that Egypt, and thanks God, knock on wood, that we are a stable country, and we did not do that out of vacuum. We paid a heavy price to be that way. And we and the president capitalize on the solidarity and the awareness and the passion of Egyptians to their country and their willingness to defend its country, not only now but throughout history, to be able to guard these principles and to advance the mission of the country as a whole. It's quite important to highlight the fact that the young cadets, and I'm talking here in general, not only about the very well celebrated and we're happy about the police academy, but cadets, graduates of all universities and of all, let's say, technical education and otherwise, they really need this message of hope that the country is supporting them, that opportunities are being created for them, that they will take part in reshaping this country. Because we, and I always say that to my students, we are not here to do more of the same. We want to be innovative. And people who learned in a certain way and been taught in a certain way are being now ready to share it in a different scope and fitting their vision and their education into the bigger vision of the country. 2030 is a good example. And one of the most interesting things about 2030 for those who would do this kind of comparison, like I humbly did, it's the one that has been, I don't want to use the word copied, but it's the one that has been inspiring to the continental Africa and many other countries around us, because it was very well put together.
Well, I'll take from your words, Professor, concerning this sense of inspiration. We always need those inspiring figures in our lives, and we also need to invest in this sense of hope that you're talking about. We cannot live without hope, and we cannot live without a sense that we have tomorrow. The president invested in that point very much when he invested in the youth, because they are the tomorrow of the country. Well, talking about those leaders and also the professors at universities, all those who are dealing with building the human character and building the human identity are considered to be responsible people for this sense of hope. because, and this role models that we need to see.
Definitely.
So how are we investing in this sense of the professor-student relationship in order to bring the best out, not only of our cadets, but of our students at large?
It's a lovely question, but it's not an easy one to answer, because I would like to talk about it for long, long hours. But if I would try to be brief, I would talk about here that kind of a relationship between a mentor or instructor in the global sense. It could be a professor, it could be a teacher in school, it could be a coach in a club and with players. So young generation always, and I was a student before, I still consider myself a student
and
at a different stage. Yes, I was.
And a champion too, let me say.
Yes, thank you. I was, and I'm proud of that, alhamdulillah. So being in that kind of situation, you always look up at a high, or let's say model, or an example to try to reach to. So definitely, we as professors, and nobody's perfect, but you have to provide, and I'm not talking about myself only, I'm talking about everybody in this kind of matrix, or this kind of organizations in the, again, in the larger sense, you have to provide this kind of good example, but also you have to create that kind of hope. And I want to say and speak frankly about that. It was not until like the last 5, 6, 7 years when this hope kind of has been revived in the young generations. Why? You put your hand on some of the most important steps that taken place. First of all, trying to
care in the first place.
Listening. That's a very important point, and I say listening and trying to. And that's in transparency. We have seen some of the most direct and most, let's say, sincere and candid questions being asked from young generations to the president, and directly, not through intermediate or someone. And the answer came from the heart as well. One of the most important messages in this regard is transparency, is to be able to let the young generation know the kind of challenges that are facing them, and be able to be prepared for them, for these kind of challenges. So that was a message that has been transformed in the youth conferences. As an example, appointing in leadership positions, you notice that in the last, let's say, 4 or 5 years, the age bracket or average of our responsible, let's say, people in power, I don't want any particular position, has been going a bit younger and more of a gender balance. So I'm talking about younger generation and some kind of balance. When you see that happening, you will think of really things are changing to the better, while our eyes are on the challenge that we're facing, and we're trying really to overcome that. This creates the sense of hope and legitimate hope. And hope, in one hand, is in balance with your preparedness to meet and reach your hope through all the kind of obstacles that you may encounter.
Yes, among the sense of legitimate hope, let me say, would be an initiative that is very noble, like the Decent Life Initiative. The Decent Life Initiative, Takaful and Karama, and those initiatives that mainly aim at transforming lives of people, especially those living in the rural areas and in Upper Egypt. This is also a very noble cause that the country is working on, and it's great also to see the youth hands-on at the same time at such initiatives, and professors at universities encouraging them to go forward with community work. How do you see that in further solidifying the sense and the bond between the state and also the youth in the sense of community services?
Yes. I'll go to two main, not only obstacles, but two main focal points that the country has been striving to achieve. I'm talking about education again, nationwide, over the past 2 decades. One of them is decentralization, and one of them, which again you addressed in a nice way, societal participation in the education process. When we talk about initiatives, and when we talk about the word initiative here, we have to be clear not only to ourselves, to the world. They are massive initiatives. Haya Karima, or Decent Life, is not a small initiative. And for this initiative, the President himself supervises that, together with a large scope of participation of businessmen, the community. And again, you mentioned a nice thing about the rural areas. There are areas where Decent Life initiative has reached that were kind of forgotten. I remember a famous stamp that while I was studying in the U.S. shows some of the Native American, and the stamp says, America Forgotten People. I don't want to make a comparison with that, but when in the, let's say, 15, 20 years ago, there was a sense of some areas in Egypt that were, the development has not reached. People in the Upper Egypt were feeling that the Delta and Cairo were receiving most of the attention and more privileged. Now you would see not only the Upper Egypt, but very rural areas. Look at Sinai and what's happening there.
Yes.
Look at the west side of Egypt nearby by Marsa Matruh, Saloum, and this area. So they are receiving attention and it's penetrating there. Again, I have to highlight here that the ability of the government to do that alone, any government, is limited. And therefore, you need the society to help the NGOs and the young men and women, the voluntary work. Are we going to teach our students only to be good in math and physics, as important as that is, without teaching them how to have this kind of activities and reach to the society? I think we are on the right track by instilling these values in them.
We are on the right track by instilling those values in them, and we are on the right track because we are a country that also depends on science and technology. We are a country that respects scientists and respects brains, and making science and making also advanced education a priority. Let's watch this report and we'll be back.
Insisting on having enlightened generations, Egypt has exerted remarkable efforts to upgrade and develop the higher educational system through radical shifts, to make a real difference and establish a new comprehensive system based upon perception, innovation, and advanced technology. In the very year President Sisi assumed office in 2014, the head of state launched the initiative towards an Egyptian society that learns, thinks, and innovates. This included the creation of the Egyptian Knowledge Bank in 2014, the largest digital library in the world. In the field of education, the country jumped 11 places in the Global Knowledge Index rankings of pre-university education. Egypt's standing also improved in technical education, as it advanced 23 places in 1 year. Throughout the last 7 years, Egypt has been exerting sincere efforts to raise the quality of its higher education, to better improve its impact on the society and the country's performance in different fields at large. The new Egypt is keen to support its cultural and scientific cooperation with the UN, Japan, Germany, Canada, and other states to advance the partnership between the state and various foreign scientific and research institutes, as well as universities. The Egyptian government keeps discussing ways to maintain scientific cooperation, benefit from expertise, and establish branches of advanced foreign universities in scientific fields in the country, aiming to bring a better future for Egypt's students across the state.
Well, we're talking about building the human character, which is considered to be a very noble cause, and today definitely among the top priorities of the state, investing in people in general and investing in the youth with special emphasis. The president has put building the Egyptian character among the top priorities of the state, and to build the human character, of course, we have to start from the very beginning, to start from the primary education and to move forward on with the different educational stages. How are we, Professor, today investing in building the human capital and at the same time paying special attention to our curriculum since the very start so that we can reap the fruit later, this sense of investment that we ask for?
The investment in education, by the way, I think the viewers and everyone knows it's an investment that will always pay back, and not necessarily too late, but quite quickly. And its ripples or effect goes to a wider circle and very quickly, as I just mentioned. Talking about the primary education, let's talk about our starting point, let's say 7-8 years ago. We were towards the lower tier, and I'm talking here not with the sense of criticizing, but just to be aware where we were and where we are and where we should be heading. We were at the lower tier of the ranking of international community or countries and so on, or schemes of education in terms of primary education. And we are advancing and have advanced. Egypt is one of the countries that have survived in a good way despite all this kind of criticism and all this kind of discomfort which happens all over the world. The last 2 years with COVID, which I hope that it will soon be over, not only in Egypt but worldwide, with the least harm happening to its education system. Of course, families and the society and the ministry and everybody is still worried and concerned. So investing in the younger generation at a very young age, and a young age is not the primary only, we're talking about the pre-education like kindergarten and so on, and really preparing them to meet the future challenges. When I talk about this, I talk also about the fact that we're starting early because that's the time to start reshaping their minds, trying to change the mode of education from one that's, as we repeated over the years, that depends mainly in knowing something and reciting it, to one that's going into innovation, to creativity.
Yeah, we don't want only receivers.
Exactly, receivers, and the worst part of that is that once they are out in the exam and they kind of spell out what they have received, rightly or wrongly,
and they forget everything.
Then it's over. And then you go even to the next stage of education, you kind of starting almost from square one. So the ability to innovate, and it's a mistake and misconception to think that creativity and research starts when you're doing your master's or PhD. It has to start early, and you have to encourage that. And I will go back to your earlier lovely question about professors and instructors in general. We have to be qualified and receptive enough to listen to criticism, to people and young men and women and pupils and kids thinking outside the box. We have a curriculum, but we have also the flexibility in implementing of that curriculum. I want to say something that, as we say in Quran, sometimes we think of things as bad, but something good is happening there, and God only knows about that. What happened in COVID is something that, in a way, strengthened our technological infrastructure for education. We are now better prepared. Let me give you one example and give the viewers one example. For so many years, and me myself in this beautiful daily debate, I came and spoke about the chronic problem of high density of pupils and students within a classroom. 70 plus was in some cases. Is that problem over? No, it's not over. Now we have social distancing, now we have COVID, but also we have the option of doing not necessarily everything online, but we can do something hybrid online, half online and half in a classroom. And I'm sure, not only in Egypt, but worldwide, this kind of heavy investment that are being put into stagnant buildings and electricity and water and all these kind of facilities that are important could be drastically minimized and put into enriching the thought of our students, their ability to learn better, to deliver better, to work together. I like to park here for 1 second and say their ability to work together as a team. People, when they finish their education, no matter what kind of degree they are, you don't go out in the world and they work alone. They have to be able to fit within a team and be able to work together with some kind of diversity, with some kind of difference, so the ability to work together like that. These are key features in our education system that is, and that's why our ranking, if you look at the last human resource report, we have advanced, and we have advanced in the education among many other sectors. And that is a very encouraging message, especially in the midst of this kind of, let's say, instability worldwide because of COVID and the economic, setbacks here and there.
Yes, we always need this sense of coaching, and especially regarding teamwork, because teamwork is considered to be the main key and access to success. So we're always, professors are talking about proper training courses, and providing the youth with this sense of training courses, preparing them for the labor market. But how about coaching them also to work in teams and to have this team spirit? And I guess at the School of Engineering, you're doing that at AUC, because your work with the students is usually hands-on, and each student has a role to play. So then he feels that his role is important until we would have later on to reap the fruit and to succeed. But when we succeed, we're going to succeed together as a team.
It's an important message, and I frankly couldn't have said it better than you did. Creating and preparing individuals that are highly qualified by far is not enough. The ability to learn from each other, to be able to identify the strengths and weakness of each one of us and work as a team to be always
what we call تكامليا, integration, an integration.
And we say as well that the team is as strong as its weakest link. So I always say to my students, and I think my colleagues in engineering and in other disciplines, and I think it's not modesty from my side, but in many other reputable universities in Egypt and elsewhere, they say, let's work together and try to communicate your problems and solve it together. And that brings us to again, another point that you mentioned. Let's talk about helping the society. Am I going to go outside, let's say, in one of those informal settlements and try to change or to contribute to a change alone? It definitely has to be within a team, and the team will work together. And the coaching of the organization, professors and staff and so on, is indispensable in this regard.
Yes, talking about community work, and I guess the best moments for an engineer is to have a discovery, to discover a certain facility, to do something that would help us all in our everyday lives, would ease our life and our lifestyle. Which is the latest one that made you all smile after you were brainstorming on one of the projects, for instance?
Well, I really would struggle with so many of these, and I don't want anyone to think lesser of their work, but I would like to start by taking the first part of your question and answer it. The happiest moment for me as a professor, honestly, is not when I'm doing something great, but when I sit like this on my chair and I look and watch my student doing something great. Then I feel that my life had a meaning. Then I feel that all the effort that has been put and investment in me is being transferred into others that I like them to be as good and better than me. And I say that honestly. We have students of ours who built or put a model to how to build on planet Mars. We have students of ours who put together some kind of form of using the waste of masks and gloves in a good way to make our building a little bit better, but definitely to get rid of these materials. We have a group of students who are trying to confront the climate change that Egypt, and while we're speaking about positive things, we talk about threats. Climate change is not a joke. The president and the president of the world, and he talks to the prince of the world about it, that this has to be addressed on the front burner of all societies. So I have so many stories of success, and I hope one day you would meet with them and they can tell you these stories themselves.
Definitely, we'd be happy to have them in Youth Today, because we're always happy here at Nile TV to show role models, and it's always inspiring, because the youth even teach each other easier. And they are always an inspiring tool to one another. Talking culture and education, Professor, to wrap up, because we have like minutes to go, and how it is an activity with the activity of thought and receptiveness to beauty and humane feelings. And in that context, we're going to have on Saturday at the Pyramids Plateau, Art d'Egypte. This is considered to be a platform under the Ministry of the auspices of the Ministry of tourism and antiquities that would bring lovers of art from different parts of the world. So education and culture, and they are both interrelated. We need them together.
Yes, I will not miss the nice statement that you said just a few seconds ago. Students and people learn from their peers, perhaps better than they learn from instructors, because they feel it's a free advice, and the kind of competition in a healthy sense helps them to do that. I will just, since we are wrapping up, I will say that events like the ones in the Plateau of Pyramids and others are really helping promoting the sense of belonging, the sense of being part of this country to our young men and women. And I have to say, our country, our government has succeeded in the last, let me just give examples, 6-7 months ago, of attracting the whole attention of the world about, if I were to give an example, the transfer of the mummies to the new museum.
Yes.
Friends from all over the world were impressed about the culture and about how the event came about, but also it was a reminder how great our country is and how much our country has contributed to the civilization of the whole world. And that is a message not only of hope, but of dignity and pride that we'd like to instill in ourselves and in our students.
Definitely, always from Egypt, messages of love, peace and hope from Egypt to the whole world. I thank you so much, Professor Dr. Mohamed Naguib Abu Zeid, Professor at AUC, for joining us on the Wednesday Debate Live and talking with us more about the features of education in the new republic, and also core-relevant issues like culture and education, investing in the youth, and leadership examples. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for hosting me. Thank you.
And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. That was Wednesday Debate, and I'm Taghreed Hussein. Many thanks for watching.